You are live. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick little video. It's a practice run for a proper video that I'll make. And if you like it or is nonsense, then you can tell me. You can say this is nonsense, I don't like it, or you can say I like it, this is useful. This is just an idea. It's made up. I made it up. And I made it up when I was having a walk. I had several walks recently, long walks. I spent like a week in Spain. I was in Barcelona and then I was in Ibiza and I was Ibiza. We need to get some consensus on how to say that friggin' island's name. I think we should do what the Spanish do and call it Ibiza. Some people don't like doing that. Even the Spanish pilot, when we landed, said Ibiza when he said it in English. I was like, why are you confused? It's not a pizza. Walking. I was walking around and I was thinking about the way in which, as I said in another video, we can have this layering of emotional flashbacks that creates a superstate, multiple layers of similarly themed emotional flashbacks that come again and again that reliably create a superstate, which would sort of function as like an archetypal response to trauma. Archetypal in the sense that when it shows up in me again and again and again, it shows up the same way. It has the same features. It has its own personality. So then in the other video, I mentioned the ID and the split. So it has its own particular face. It has its own particular structure. It has patterns of behavior. It has beliefs. And it becomes an abused archetype. The one I spoke of in the last video was what do I do? I move this. Or do I move this? No, be intelligent. That's not smart, is it? Move this. The abused archetype I mentioned was sad baby, and that resonated with people. And this came off the back of a dream where I was trying to get a pencil or something. How very Freudian, how phallic. I was trying to reach for a pen and I couldn't, and then I felt sad and I gave up. But I was in the dream, I was a baby. I couldn't think, oh, there's a pen and I want it and I can't have it. I couldn't have these layered thoughts. I was like, me want pen, me not have pen, me cross. So, and then I thought that this can actually translate forward. It can carry forward if the baby was very sad and abandoned and it can't cater for its own needs. It can't get up and say, hey, you rapscallion, give me that bally pen. It just goes, you know, it can't do anything else. Which then we as adults, you know, this sad baby abused archetype can be like a freeze response or an automatic freeze fawn, where in the face of somebody saying, hey, F you, buddy, or mocking you or taking something from you, you just do nothing. And then afterwards you go, what the hell's wrong with me? What kind of a person just stands there doing nothing whilst someone would say such a thing to them? Sad baby, you know, you can't take care of yourself, and it carries forward. Another would be we'll call it temper toddler, you know, which is another archetype of mine. I listened to Gabor Mate the other day in an interview, and he said, I feel fairly resolved, you know, myself. He was talking personally in his own process, except for the occasional homicidal rages. And I was laughing. Even Gabor Mate gets into homicidal rages sometimes. How could you not? Look at the world. A thought is not an action. It's not illegal to desire to kill people. It's yet. It will be one day. But right now, we only lock people up for doing it. So, you know, that could be another abused archetype. Oh, and sorry, I was going to go on and say it occurs in me with what we call it an archetype, or we could, I hypothesize, I suggest we could call it an archetype, because when it occurs in me, it occurs in a predictable way, in a regular way, and it occurs in you. and it occurs in multiple people, and they go, oh yes, that resonates with me, so there must be something in them as well where they feel like they just can't, they feel helpless, and then they feel abandoned, and so they kind of abandon themselves in response. The temper toddler would be, my boundaries are infringed upon, I feel disrespected, I feel taken for granted, and instead of responding as an adult with an ego and saying, hey, this isn't cool, can we maybe find a solution that doesn't involve you being a dick to me, going through emotional flashback, instantly accessing a well-practiced super state, hitting that DID split, and becoming James McAvoy in the film Split plays, I think he used to play, I don't know, I think they settled on like 11 different characters, and he does a great job. It's not the best film ever made, and but he does a good acting job in that film. But there is one called The Beast. So, the temper toddler might be the beast, that which takes violent action. So this would be a manifestation of a freezing response, and this would then become a manifestation of a fight response. But what I'm suggesting is to take it further and say this is an abused archetype, and there's actually a whole personality that goes in there. You become somebody else, so you become the response. But we're now moving beyond the more platitudinal 70s, 80s, 90s yoga meditation teachers who are saying, oh, you have become your anger. Do not, behold your anger. Do not become your anger. I'm going, yeah, mate, got that. But I'm actually saying that that's a personality. That's a split in the personality. So that there's this angry dude or angry dudette that you become. And she has a whole other belief system. Like you might be, I don't know, like in many ways, like super permissive and liberal and hippy dippy when you're in your normal state, and then you might switch into an angry state, and suddenly you're not that liberal anymore. You become a different human being with a different belief system, which is where the super state and the split thing came in. So these would be our internalized responses, and my conjecture, I nearly said theory, my hypothesis is that there's going to be a whole bunch of these. This is following on from me saying I don't find Jung all that useful. I don't find the idea of archetypes useful. And then a couple of months later going, except in this way, except here, this may be of use. Now, I've covered this with you, and I think everybody got it. But I got a question the other day via email from somebody who's been following me for a long time, and I'm really sorry that I didn't answer the email. I'm doing the video to kind of partly answer what you asked me, because it's such a complicated subject, and it's so now that I want to talk about it now. And this is just a rough cut, between us, and this may disappear afterwards, and then I'll do like a proper rehearsed video. So this is the abused archetype. What if, and this is our response, us. Our response. This is me. So this is our response. Then there is what we perceive in others, and I think there is the abuser archetype. Now, in terms of interpersonal relationships, this is damaging. If you want to be in an intimate long-term relationship and you flashback into another personality, which is the abused archetype, that's damaging. This, for a relationship, is catastrophe. This is the essence of projective identification, would be right here. So the abuser archetype is something that we are seeing in the other, in other people from this. So this is where it gets a little bit weird. What I'm suggesting is to exactly this: emotional flashbacks, a super state is created. The emotional flashbacks, I'm saying emotional flashbacks, I'm talking about five or like a chain of emotional flashbacks, let's say 5 or 6 colors of the flashback rainbow, multicolored flashbacks that are played again and again and again and again for decades, and they layer and they compress and they ossify and they become a super state, which effectively becomes like a personality split in you, in me. So I'm only going to refer to me to keep this less confusing from now on. So even if these things don't apply to me, let's pretend it's me. So I may show up as sad baby, I may show up as temper toddler, I may show up as the Inquisitor General. You know, that's my fight response. I don't scream and shout, but I start interrogating everybody and asking questions. That actually isn't one of mine, but I've seen people do that, and I think it's an abused response. What I'm saying is we have the emotional flashback. Sorry, let's not say we. I have the emotional flashback. I go into the super state. I go into a split in my personality, but I experience my personality split in you. In you. So in the film Split, he had 11 different characters. There was like a little boy. There was an older lady who was matronly. There was all these different characters. Imagine that whole film. I mean, you couldn't shoot it. It's unfilmable. But what he's experiencing is exactly the same personalities, but in other people. So the little boy, I can't remember the little boy's name, whatever, the little innocent child, everybody he sees is a little innocent child. The beast, the ultimate violent, super-powered dark creature, he sees that everywhere when he goes into a split. This then goes from abused, I am this, to abuser, you are this. So my phrasing will now not be I am. And this is why we rehearse. It will be you are. You are. So through exactly the same process, what I'm suggesting is I'm not saying the word schizophrenia, and I'm not suggesting that schizophrenia is an umbrella term for a whole range of diagnosable conditions that are usually around psychosis and delusion. So I'm not suggesting full psychotic delusion. What I'm suggesting is that we can go into a certain emotional flashback, and instead of us showing up as one of our abused archetypes, of which there are 6, 7, 11, I don't know, we start seeing the abuser archetype and projecting it into the other. Okay, so protecting privacy, etc., and swapping everything around. So, okay. So I receive an email from a Russian man, and he doesn't live in Russia anymore. This is made up. You can tell my brain's stuttering as I try and catch up with this. And he lives in England. And he doesn't see people in the area of England he is. There's no Russians, there's no Slavs at all. So he doesn't see people with what he would consider to be typically Russian faces ever. His father was extremely abusive. He was an abusive alcoholic and beat him and shamed him, and extreme boundary breaking abuse, extreme amounts of shame and guilt. And he has left Russia to escape all that because he finds even hearing the language, tasting the food, hearing the music, all of it weighs heavy on him, and it induces the emotional flashbacks and it induces this traumatized state. So he goes to England, where he doesn't, that music is not there. You can't find the Russian. Nobody, the English people don't learn to speak Russian. Nobody's just casually speaking Russian. You would be very unlucky to catch a Russian word movie on TV, like it just is super rare. Okay, so he walks down the street to the supermarket to buy milk, and an English gent who is in his 80s speaks to him in a tone of voice that reminds him of his father. Perhaps he knows him and he uses the nickname from childhood. And he says, what are you doing here, you young cheeky rapscallion? And he says, oh, hello, Albert. I've come here to buy milk. And in a very uncomfortable, somewhat creepy, but seeking to be friendly way, the older gentleman says, yeah, but you've really come here to check out the checkout assistants, haven't you? I know you sly dog, you. And he means it neutrally. It's weird and uncomfy, but Albert's just trying to be cool. Albert's just trying to be cool with our friend Sergey. But the tone of voice he uses and the way he says Sergey's name reminds him of his father. And even though the old Englishman's face looks nothing like his father's face, as he looks in horror, the face distorts into his father. And even the tone of voice becomes his father's voice. And all of a sudden, there's an auditory hallucination there where Albert's like speaking in Russian, but it's actually the over familiarity, perhaps the body language, like God, I can't remember the adjective. It's 10 o'clock at night here. My brain's not firing on full thing. Like you're being over friendly and you're doing it in a certain way to get a certain response. And suddenly he's flashing back and he thinks Albert's chatting to him in Russian. It can't be. And suddenly Albert's got his father's face. And effectively this becomes a hallucination, which is what the email that I was sent was asking me about, is do I know anything about this? And my answer to that is no, I don't. My psychology degree from the place that I did it was behavioral psychology. It was sciencey, and psychoanalysis is funny, and psychotherapy is a joke, and counseling is for who's that for? Really, we had 10-week, 1 hour a week module on abnormal psychology, and it was optional, and I didn't take it. So learning about the cluster B is fairly new for me. I just had to pick up the books and start reading the books and research in 2014. I mean, I've only really been at it for like 4 or 5 years. So when it comes to hallucinations and anything that is in the realm of psychosis or delusion where the individual doesn't now they don't know, or they're struggling to tell the difference between reality and hallucination and delusion. No, I don't know about that. But what this person who wrote to me said is, do you know anything about hallucination in this context? And so I would say this. I know about projective identification, and I know about incredibly intense emotional flashbacks from my own personal experience, where I can tell you that without a shadow of a doubt, when you are intensely emotionally dysregulated and cycling through these, so up until now, we've been talking about emotional flashbacks, and it's like a bad thing happened. You learned the bad thing. You created neural pathways, and then you're just this. I just mentioned behavioral psychology. It's like you're conditioned. It's a conditioned response. You're the rat in the T-shaped maze. If I go left, I get sugar. If I go right, I get electric shocks. I go through the maze. I go through the maze. I go through the maze. On the 20th day, you can't get me to not go left. Because me like sugar, me not like electric shock. Me rat, me much prefer the sugar. So that's the way we've been thinking about it. And when I was thinking about this, my vision was more like a machine that cycles. Now, why is it cycling? Why would it be a machine that cycles? Why is my unconscious showing me this machine that cycles of emotional flashbacks, the personality, that's in this state, that's been heavily traumatized. It goes vroom, vroom, vroom. That's what I was getting. I was like, what the hell's that? Why is my unconscious giving me that as a model for what this is? And I started thinking, yes, that makes sense, because the emotional flashbacks are not just the Pavlovian dog, hear bell ringing, time for make salivate. It's not that simple. You're still fighting to survive. Vroom, vroom, vroom. But what are you doing? You're cycling through solutions. Who do I need to be to make mummy stop? Who? Why? What? Which of? Because I can be whatever you want me to be, but just tell me first so I can crack the cipher, so I can crack the code. So the emotional flashbacks are cyclical, and we cycle through trying to find the solution of who to be, because the superstate concept is something from psychology that I developed for self-protection psychology. But it basically, just think in terms of a DID, dissociative identity disorder split. Forget all the academic arguments about whether it's real, not real, blah, blah. Forget all that. Let's pretend it's real. Let's pretend it's real like it is in the movies, where the person goes into another split and they don't know any of their other personalities. They're never egged on by psychiatrists looking to write papers. They're never trying to appease therapy. No. It's just, let's be naive. Without the argumentation. Something like this clearly happens, okay? Despite all the arguments in academia as to whether it's real or not, something like it happens because it resonates with us. Every human goes, yes, something like that in me is occurring, even if they're not traumatized. Why are we cycling? What's the machine doing? The urge to cycle through different archetypes is you know, I forget all my words. You know, your bike lock, and it's a chamber lock. You spin the numbers, and it locks in. If you get the right combination, the chamber lock goes click, 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 and then it's 4 gaps. It can't be 3 gaps and 1 lock. It needs to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 gaps. Out it comes, and out it unlocks. But you have to roll the numbers until you find the one that unlocks. We never won that game. That's what real long-term emotional dysregulation and CPTSR is. We never won. We never figured it out because it was a losing game. But you can't give up because you're a child. Like, you can't go, fuck this bitch. You can't. Unfortunately, you can't, like, oh, my dad's just a dick. Fuck it. That doesn't matter. Fuck him. Doesn't matter. Oh well. I'll be out of here in 16 years. You can't rationalize that because you have no ego boundaries. You can't do that. So you get stuck on this hamster wheel. I've got to find a solution. I've got to find a solution. I've got to find a solution. So the emotional flashbacks. This is why I'm testing out with you guys, see what you think, because this is a bit of this is a wild statement, and this also is a wild statement. We ride them like waves now. So I say to people, go do your stop emotional flashback exercise. Go do that thing. Go and get rid of these emotional flashbacks. They go, yeah, I'll totally go and do that. And they totally don't go and do that, because that's now part of who I am. I don't know how to go and get a job without riding the emotional flashbacks and the super states that spin off the back of it. That's my ego now. My ego is not a fixed, permanent, pervasive, personal, reliable, barely changing across contexts. It's like this circle. It's the image of the monad. It's a perfect circle because that's a perfect circle. The monad, and that's the singularity, and that's the cell. That's the original cell, and the walls of the cell let good stuff in, nom, and bad stuff out. That's a good ego boundary, and it's stable. And to those of us who've been riding the hamster wheel for years, it also comes across as extremely, or can do, extremely dull. in the context of intimate relationships. So watch out for that, because you've met people you've met people who are mentally healthy. You've met the emotionally well. You've met the psychologically stable. And your response was, boring. Isn't that crazy? So what we have is a dynamic, rolling thing that's trying to compensate for the gaps in the ego, and it can't stop. It's like, I'm not stopping. I might die if I stop. So it moves, it rolls, it rolls. So I'm saying, get down off the ceiling, calm down, just sit down, be present, use your critical thinking. Let's overcome the emotional flashbacks. And you're like, F you, I'll die if I can't stop. I'm a rolling stone. I got to gather no moss. I got to keep going. So we then start to induce emotional flashbacks, not consciously. I don't think anybody does it consciously. But we create situations in which there will be adrenaline. We create situations in which there will be drama. If I'm a fight responder, I'm going to create a situation with somebody who's just the most outrageous, entitled dick, who's going to do the worst things possible to me, so that I can fight respond, because I got to keep rolling. It's got to keep moving. Vroom, vroom, vroom. The machine just rolls on and rolls on and rolls on. It's exhausting, of course. It's a completely exhausting process. And then my relationships are like this. Whether, interpersonal, intimate relationships, whatever, they're wild and roller coastery, because I'm looking for this. And at an unconscious level, I'm scanning and I'm going, sane? You're sane. No. I don't. Yeah, well, that's lovely for you, but what am I going to do with you? I have no use for you, because here I am, and I'm relying on this. So I'm suggesting two things. Well, so that we have the three wild suggestions. The abused archetype, people didn't mind that. They went, yeah, that sounds about right. And I went, okay, then. The abuser archetype is a little bit wilder, because that means that I am suggesting that we're going to pretend that the DID split was real. We're not going to have that argument. We're just going to go, yeah, it's fine. It's real. But that's not even the point. The point is that something like that happens, and I'm saying we project it outward. So the film Split would be James McAvoy experiencing all those characters, but projecting them onto other people. So the real guy, who he is, there's a real ego underneath all of the fragmented ego parts. Let's say his name is Bill, and he's just this sad, not particularly brave or assertive dude who has sort of relinquished control to these internal monsters. So the whole film would just be this sad, not particularly assertive dude going, oh, look at that. These people who seem to be this, actually, I'm projecting this onto them. Oh my God, horrifying. Oh my God, this is lovely. Projecting, because maybe we don't just project abusers. Maybe we project all kinds of stuff onto people. Maybe instead of the abuser archetype, if we're looking at other archetypes, we should look at, I don't know, Romeo. He's my Romeo. He's beautiful. He's perfect. Do you want to know how many clients I've had who have told me that their partners look like film stars? He looks like Johnny Depp. Let me send you a picture of him. And they send me a picture of him, and I'll be like, thank you very much. Please don't send me any pictures of people without their permission. That doesn't look like Johnny Depp. It's never looked like, or they'll say it to me, and I'll know who they're dating, and I'll be like somebody said their husband looked like Sean Connery. Oh, he's not a good man. He does this. He cheats on me, but I love him. He's my Sean Connery. And I'd be like, is there another Sean Connery? Is there some other same guys about women? I've heard them say, they say they're like film stars. So a Romeo archetype, or what's the ultimate? Maybe like a Lilith archetype, or God, what do the Christians always call it? God, my brain is not working at all tonight. It's gone. Somebody, Jezebel. Thank you, Odessa. I knew Odessa would come through with that one. Jezebel, yes, Jezebel. So you could have like a Romeo archetype, you could have a Jezebel archetype, and that would be your. It is abusive. They're ultimately going to be abusive towards you, but in that moment, that's your lover. That's your. This is the person who's going to rescue me, and you're projecting that outwards. The hallucination element, so that we don't get confused. I do not know anywhere near enough to have an intelligent conversation even about psychotic disorders. Nowhere near. I haven't picked up a paper and read a paper on psychotic disorders since somebody forced me to in university a long time ago. And I have enough on my plate. I don't want to. But in terms of the CPTSR spectrum, not hallucination, but projection. Because I was specifically, the word used in the email that was sent me was hallucination. I don't know. You could be like, at that point, if you experienced it as a hallucination and you were like, rather that, because everything is softer boundary than we pretend. We like to pretend that we're these rational human beings and everything is super clear and we make our decisions. Everything's just a series of impressions. We're just a series of impressions. But if you experienced it, as a hallucination, I would recommend seeking the help of a professional. If you're experiencing it as like, oh, it was a weird thought. Like if Sergey goes to me, for a second there, he kind of looked like my dad. Obviously, I knew it wasn't my dad because he was an old Englishman, not a Russian. But I for a second, he was talking, and I could have sworn he spoke to me in Russian, but he didn't. That would be a different experience for me hearing the story than him saying he became my father. And I'd be like, whoa, that man in the supermarket, he had my father's face. Because I've not professionally, this was a long time ago. A friend of mine kept saying this to me. He had very strong PTSD from he was in wasn't special forces, but it was like a very front-facing infantry unit, and it had been in Iraq, it had been in Afghanistan, and he'd come back and he wasn't in a good way. And there were these mediums, and I think they were just taking money off him, but he was like, no, I give them money and their faces literally change shape and I can talk to my dead mum. But he wasn't like, for a second there, by the low lighting in the room, she kind of smiled at me the way my mum would. He was like, no, I saw my mum. That's my mum's face. You know what I'm saying? So if the person is saying to me, no, I heard them speak Russian and that was my father's face, I'd be like, okay, that's a hallucination. Maybe I would be more in the field, in the realm of talking about impressions. Like your emotional dysregulation is warping your perception, and so you have the impression of something. So, yeah. That's it, I guess. If you've got any questions about anything, I think I'm going to stop there. So over to you guys. If you've got any questions, you can write them in the chat box. Just make sure it's like a single sentence and ends in a question mark. Was this useful? Like, does this resonate for you? I know a lot of people were happy with this and they said that it resonated for them. Does this resonate for you? And particularly this, have you ever had the experience where you've gone into an emotional flashback that was so intense that you actually saw the person in a different way, where you actually were experiencing them as though they were somebody else? Useful. Yes, it was useful. Ruffle. I'm going to have to remember that one. I had a few like that. Ruffle. I haven't gone into it, as I say, I'm not comfortable going into it, would be to look at where there is overlap between conditions of schizophrenia, conditions of, psychosis, where there's been just a full break, because I know in the academic world, they don't know what causes it. So they're going, it's genetic. Sometimes we've seen evidence that it's actually drug usage over time that causes it. Sometimes there is evidence that it's trauma, or perhaps it's epigenetic. So there's a latent gene there, and the intense trauma of war, the intense trauma of a violent confrontation or a car crash, that's the thing that triggers it. That is interesting, certainly. But for me, it's this particular element of projecting outward, but in a way that's regular, so that we're So like I said Jezebel as a man, as a heterosexual man. For me, it would be a Jezebel. Now, I would do two things, wouldn't I? I would work in the external world and I'd find somebody who was Jezebel-like. And then I would bring my projections so that I can pull them together, so that I can do this thing of pulling up emotional flashbacks so that I can experience myself. I have a sister with an NPD guy. She refuses to get into therapy. She always has an excuse for why she can't do it. Thoughts, Sir Richard? I always think, like, if you know, if you know somebody and you think they're with somebody who's not great for them, just like take a step back, be super detached, make sure that you're not bringing your stuff to their situation, that you're seeing things objectively, because you don't want to be projecting your experiences onto her boyfriend if it's not really there. So at that point, I would be saying, and this is more like personal advice, like if I met you in the pub, this is what I would say, rather than like a professional official stance on it, would be, don't call him NPD, because that's a statement of isness about who he is, and like, you don't know, I don't know. Talk in terms of the behavior in states of doingness, or maybe even having certain behaviors and doing certain behaviors. What are the behaviors? Now, from that perspective, we take a step back, we detach, we go, okay, we can objectively see that there's abusive behaviors here. You got to be really, really careful, because people get trauma bonded. Now, do you want to lose your relationship with your sister if it's that bad that you start trying to pull her out and she's in this two-person cult? Well, anybody who tries to remove one of the members of the cult away from the cult leader will be character assassinated. You would become a non-believer. You would become kafar. You would be a kafar, and you'd just be denounced. You know, do you see how your sister is? Do you see how people are with you? Do you see what they do to you? Do you see how they exploit you? You see, but not me. I would never. See, it's not. You see how she is with you. She's jealous because she knows that you found somebody who's good for you and that loves you. You should stay away from her. She's a bad influence. And then every time she says that she's seen you or heard from you, he'll be like, why are you still talking to her? Why do you put yourself through that? All the games, man, all the games are going to come out. So you've got to be really careful. My image for that is like, there's your sister, and you love her, and she's going through an experience, and that's life. We can't protect the people that we love from pain. We can't protect ourselves from pain. But what we can do is we can be there. So the image is this. While she's doing what she's doing, you keep your link with her. You keep that hand held, and you're there. You're there. You're present. And if she doesn't want to hear about it, she doesn't want to know about it, she really doesn't, let it go, man. Let it go. Don't bring it up with her anymore. You don't let go of her. You're there for her, because who knows? It might be, if he is a bad dude, it could take her 10, 15 years to figure out which way is up. It could take 6 months. I don't know. But you want to be there when that happens. You don't want to have a damaged or spoiled relationship, and you don't want her put him. I can speak English. It's actually my first language. Pretty impressive, right? You don't want her pushing you away. Manuela asks, the cluster B have psychotic episodes, maybe BPD. Some things he did were very, very irrational. Well, BPD is called borderline because the diagnosis was originally, you are psychotic. You're not quite psychotic. That's why we call it borderline personality disorder. What's it on the board? What country is it bordering? You're in this country, but you're on the border of that country. That's borderline personality disorder diagnosis. Which country are you bordering? Full-blown psychosis. So yes, absolutely. I mean, you could even say that for borderline, certainly, part of the definition, it's written into the definition, they need to be verging on fully psychotic. And then your next question, Manuela, which would be a rational question, would be to say, so if they are said to be bordering on psychotic, doesn't that mean that they would be prone to delusions that could even show up as hallucinations? And I would start backing away and going, maybe, I don't know, you should speak to an academic who studied that particular thing. But yeah, sure. I mean, borderline particularly is marked by psychosis, or the proximity to psychosis, I should say. Okay. For years, I stood close to my friend and her domestically violent marriage. One day we fell out, and now she is hell-bent on crushing me, making all sorts of fake threats to the police. Please help. How can I deal with it? I cut contact months, 2 years ago. I honestly don't know, mate. I honestly don't know. I mean, if she's calling the police, I would seek legal advice straight away, because you got to take that kind of thing seriously. Obviously, I presume she's calling the police because she's going after your reputation. So some injuries being inflicted there, I would definitely seek legal advice. Have you read up on transactional analysis and the life script set in childhood way of living our lives? I have actually, yeah. That's one of quite proud I can say I've actually read up on that one, yeah. It's one of the first things I read when I was still 14 or 15. It's actually, I think, had quite an influence on the way that I think I've always thought about doing things, but I never give it credit. I never say anything about it. But I think there's a lot of things that I never give credit to, but that have influenced me because they're just not there in my conscious. I'm not consciously aware. I'm not going to sit here and go, I know Freud has affected my thinking, Robert Anton Wilson and Bill Hicks, but there's probably tons that have. But yeah, the life script concept I think is incredibly powerful, and it's real. It's a real thing, and I think the book that I read particularly wanted to focus on how to change the life script, and not an easy thing. But if you look at like all the videos, there will always be, I think, a theme of trying to give people tools that help them to change the things that other people would find really hard to change. Did that sentence make sense? Overdid. Trying to change your life script. Yeah. Oh God, I'm sorry. I don't know how to control this very well. Oh, here we go. Can the person suffering through CPTSD undermine healthy relationships by projecting NPD onto their partner? I have to say the answer to that question, I have to say, is yes. But number one, if you are really suffering with CPTSD and you're going through raging emotional flashbacks, and therefore I hypothesize cycling through multiple states and multiple splits, trying to figure out how to make yourself feel safe in childhood. And you go, but I'm not in childhood, it's today. I know, but you're doing it with the conviction that a child struggling for survival would. Then, should you be dating? Should you be trying to get into relationships? That really needs resolving. Everybody's got emotional dysregulation to some degree. And to the extent that we have psychological blind spots and emotional dysregulation, as all human beings do, our relationships, especially our most intimate ones, are in danger. But you've really got to work on reducing the emotional flashbacks. You've really got to get yourself to a point where you can say, with conviction, what that person just did was cruel, was nasty, it was of evil intent, and the purpose was to hurt me. Or what that person did was really careless, really thoughtless, but it was not cruel. And if you can't, in your heart, somatically go, yes, I know the difference between those two things, you should probably back away from the relationship, because this abuser archetype that is being held, the online cluster B survival community is riddled with this. It's riddled with it. And this is a recent realization for me. And I previously, when I didn't understand it, I found it quite frustrating because I thought that all people were trying to do was derail the process and, just be on a witch hunt. They were hobbyists. They're just hobbyists. They're on a witch hunt. They see it everywhere and they're obsessed with it. Now what I'm saying is, no, this witch hunter, because if you're in the abuser archetype and you're seeing it everywhere, this is a manifestation of trauma. You don't want to get caught again. So you're like, where is it? Your brain goes, where's what? What are we looking for? We're looking for a wolf. Remind me what a wolf is. It's this fucking fairy face thing. It looks like a dog, but it's big. It's got ears like this, and it's got fangs like this. And your brain goes, oh, yeah. That's what we're looking for, is it? Yeah. What are we looking for again? Sorry. Wolf. 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 Wolf, 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 wolf. Did you ever see Game of Thrones? Did you see the dire wolf in Game of Thrones? It comes up to the kids. They're like teenagers. They all get a dire wolf each. And it's this huge, furry, shaggy wolf that comes up to your shoulder. They were real at one time. There were these wolves around that were this huge. Imagine being faced by a wolf. Imagine what that smells like. Wolf, wolfy, wolfy, wolf, 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 wolf. So in the last 90 seconds, I said the word wolf, and I spoke about its teeth, and I spoke its ears, and its smell, and its fur, and then you thought about wolves in the context of a fancy medieval realm. Your brain is now going wolfy, wolf, 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 and you're thinking of wolves. Like, how could you not? I keep saying the bloody word. Of course you're thinking of them. So look at it from a really simplistic point of view. I am putting an image in my mind's eye. How am I not? Like, there's a white wall there, and I can see a white wolf on the wall really easily. There's a wolf. It looks like an emblem. It doesn't look like a real wolf. It looks like a shield with a wolf's face on it. It's right there on the white wall that's there. Because my brain's going, this is what you wanted, isn't it? You said you wanted to look out for wolves. So I'm keeping a picture of a wolf in our visual field so that when you see the outline of one, you can pick up your spear and react swiftly to it. If you are hyper vigilant to a certain threat over and over and over again, you'll see it. This is how soldiers in combat zones shoot their teammates. Because what do we don't want the man with the gun. The man with the gun. The man with the gun is bad. The man with the gun is to be shot. Shoot the man with the gun when you see the man with the gun. Okay, and then obviously sometimes it's a firefight and it's somebody will just run in front of you, or people panic, or they get confused or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about situations where soldiers have fragged each other in a split-second decision because they saw threat and responded. I think that's also this. So be careful and imbibing material that is about wolves all the time is going to make you obsessed with the idea there's wolves everywhere. The higher your fear, the greater your fear, your terror, your awe of the man with the gun, of the wolf, I'm using generic metaphors around predators here. The brain boxes amongst you'll go, he's doing that NLP thing again, isn't he, to make a point, is you'll see them where they are not. It's just jumping at shadows. You'll start jumping at psychological shadows as well. Point number 2 is, there are people out there who are dicks and they're highly exploitative, and I wouldn't want you to date them. Your dad doesn't want you to date them. Your mom doesn't want you to date them, but they're not. They don't have a personality disorder. Psychiatrists have zero interest in them. They're just bellends. And that's why I say focus on the behavior. If somebody is being abusive, leave. Don't go, is it a dire wolf? Is it a white wolf? Is it a big wolf? It's a baby wolf. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just go, look, mate, here's me, here's you, you're doing this. Like last night we were out and you said this. I know you didn't mean it, but it made me feel a certain way. I don't want to feel that way right now. I can't be doing this. I can't have this argument with you right now. We gotta stop and then walk. walk. You have the right to leave. I gave you all the Stop Emotional Flashback course for free. And what does the Stop Emotional Flashback course tell you to remind yourself of 5 times a day? That you count things off on your fingers to remind yourself of. That you can feel a certain way, you can honor that feeling, you can communicate with yourself and leave if you choose to. And you should exercise that right. And don't like pathologize and psychologize and mind read and be like, oh my goodness, is it his childhood trauma? Is she this way because her father was like, he wasn't really present? And it's none of your business, homie. Just leave. Like if they're not, because there may really be nothing wrong with that person. They might just be emotionally immature, or they might be going through something. If you rubber stamp them as being like, you're a grade level 6.521 from the DSM manual, none of which you're qualified to do. And even the people who are qualified to do it, I wouldn't trust them to make those diagnoses either, because they've all been voted on by other fallible human beings anyway. What does it get you to rubber stamp them? I am giving you the permission to leave on the point where you feel that there is abuse or exploitation. You sit, you take a breath. You need to be away from that person for a day before you split up with somebody. You should take a day. You should take 3 because you're watching a YouTube video. I don't want to have you make major relationship decisions on this. And go, is what happened? Not what do I think they meant, because you're not psychic. You're not psychic. And even if you are, your psychic skills won't help you with your boyfriends and your girlfriends. So walk away for a second, take a breather, just take a step and go, look, am I saying what I'm saying? Did this person do this? Okay, let's think of the reasons why a person would do or say that. Okay, there are no reasons why a person would do or say that other than if they were of cruel intent, or they're in a place in their lives where they're so traumatized and they're so callous through their trauma, or thoughtless. Like I've done and said thoughtless shit to people. I actually, in my late 20s, I developed a reputation for it. And there was this, it was a really nice couple that I knew. And I actually, looking back, I realized I genuinely hurt their feelings through a joke that I said. And it's one of these major, like, you know, you wake up at 3 a.m, you're like, why did I do that? Why didn't I see the signals? That wasn't fucking funny to them. They were like sensitive intellectual types and blah, blah. It doesn't matter what the backstory is, but it's like one of my big regrets in life. I'm like, that was a really fucking dumb thing to do. There was zero evil intent. In fact, it was the opposite. I was trying to, it was my dumb idea of friendliness. It was my dumb idea, but I had mates that I could banter with like that, but not them. They weren't like that. And I just fucking misread it. And I think I actually genuinely hurt them. I think I actually genuinely made them feel bad. It's a terrible thing, but it's for them to then go, well, I don't want to fucking hang around with this guy because he makes me feel bad. Is that right or wrong? That's right. It doesn't matter that I'm in my 20s and I'm not emotionally matured yet, and I haven't. It doesn't matter. You just go, guy's a dick. At least for now, he might be nicer when he's like in 12 years' time, but right now he's a dick. Let's just not hang out with him anymore. Which, as it happens, was the decision they made. So yeah, don't pathologize this stuff. Don't turn it into another intellectual exercise that allows you to remain by, I'm going to solve this. No, because Abuser Archetype, the problem solver. You know, you want to be that peacekeeper working for the UN. You're not Kofi Annan. And it's not your job. It's not your job to do that. You're not qualified. You're not good enough for it. And even if you're a professional and that's your job and you are good at it in other people's relationships, you will suck at it in your own. Have the humility to just go, look, I gotta bow out of this. But look at the behaviors first and foremost. What is the person actually doing? What are they saying? And what can you gather from that? Engage in critical thinking. If the behavior seems to be hurting you, then that gives you the right to leave. They don't need to be rubber stamped with something that comes from a psychiatrist for you to have the right to leave. The ancient Latin my trusty moderator says, it drives me nuts thinking about past memories that make me cringe. Those, why did I say that kind of situations? Yeah, there's like a thing you can get into where if you're a fawn responder, if you have a fight fawn response and you are funny, like I am, there's no, like, I can be funny. But when you are, and this is why I'll always have deep sympathy for comedians when they overstep the line in their comedy, is because in order to be funny, you have to keep finding the line and pushing it, and keep finding the line and then going past it, because the laugh that you get is often outrage while you are dancing in a minefield. If you're really funny, if you're properly funny, then you are dancing through minefields, and you keep doing it. You keep doing it. You're gonna hit one. You're gonna hit one or two. You're bound to. Like it's inevitable. And I think if I could go back, and I sometimes have to consciously remind myself now, because my impulse is like, oh, I know something funny to say. Let's say this fucking stupid thing, and I'll be like, wait. First of all, you don't have to be funny. You can sit and listen. Second of all, listen. This is the last thing I'm going to finish on. I've gone into this is relevant CPTSR and good communication skills. You all know Will Ferrell, and he cut his teeth doing Saturday Night Live, a lot of which is improvised. Steve Carell did that, and he was asked in an interview, how did you find doing improvisational work? What was the most important thing, and what did you take away from that? And he said that the advice he got from people on Saturday Night Live that really worked for him was listen. So I find myself thinking about that now in a social situation where I'm with people and I'm trying to like bring the tension down, break the ice, make people feel comfortable. I'm like, oh, I know something funny to say. And then I'll just go, first of all, I don't have to be funny. I don't have to, it's not my job to make other people feel comfortable. I can let them sit in discomfort a little bit longer and, just gentle myself off. And second of all, listen, like, are they going to like that? Are they going to appreciate that? Or am I just going to end up being locked into the archetype of that dick guy who says funny, but like rude, boundary breaking, outrageous jokes? Because I don't want that. I don't want to be stuck in that like box. So it's worth remembering that for your communication skills. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop there. I hope that was useful. Sorry I didn't get around to answering everybody's questions. As ever, thank you very much for your time and your attention. It really is appreciated. If you guys resonate with this stuff, I'll develop it for a proper video, which will be rehearsed. So thank you very much for your help. It's really appreciated. Cheers, guys.